towards the traffic lights, this was the end of Edinburgh as a city. So, if you think about it, Edinburgh was very, very small. Very small. And the people that lived here, they were very poor and often did not have a lot of money. I mentioned earlier that we had lots of different gates throughout the city that you could come in and out of that big protective wall. Now this was where the Netherbold port was, right in front of us. And this was the grandest entryway into Edinburgh. You had to pay to come in and you had to pay to leave. So for a lot of people, that was not achievable. Edinburgh as a city, that was all they knew, which is why if you look to your right, we actually have the World's End pub and the World's End close. Because after the Netherbold port that we're about to be going through historically, nothing existed for the people of Edinburgh. There was no point in them dreaming about what came after the wall because they would never achieve leaving. If you look down, as we go through the traffic lights on the cobbled road that we're on at the moment, you might notice some golden and brass cobbles, and these cobbles are to represent exactly where the Netherbold port would have been. The Edinburgh port was pretty famous. As I mentioned, it was the grandest entryway. But if you were a criminal who was caught committing the same crimes over and over and over again, you would be executed. And parts of your body would actually be displayed on the Edinburgh port to warn people coming into Edinburgh that we don't deal with criminals very well in this city. My dear, hold on tight. So, historically, we've now left the city of Edinburgh and we are now in the Canongate. The Canongate was a separate borough or a separate city. Obviously, we're now joined. The Canongate in Gaelic directly translates to being the way of the monks. A canon was a member of church at Holyrood Abbey, right down at the bottom, and gate means way. So this was the way that those members of church would walk up to St Giles or Edinburgh Castle. This part of Edinburgh is most famous for those closes or alleys that I mentioned to you earlier. We've got Dunbar's Close, which would be on your left, just as we go down, and Dunbar's Close is where that big secret garden is that you can go and visit for free. Now we're just coming up to the Toll Booth Tavern, also on your left. This here is a really good place for you to go and sample different dietary requirements for haggis, such as vegetarian or gluten-free. Now, in just a second, we're going to be approaching stop number 13. And I'm mentioning it now because it's a very important stop in the tour. This is where you're going to get off if you're visiting Holyrood Palace, Arthur's Seat, the Scottish Parliament, any of this section of Edinburgh. Very important stop. Do we have people that want off there? Lovely. Okie dokie. If you look to your right, this is the Scottish Parliament. We have this very old looking building there that doesn't look like part of it, but it actually is. This is where the Scottish Speaker has his office, and it is another listed building here in Edinburgh, which is why it is joined and hasn't been knocked down. Thank you. Have a nice day. Also on your right, if you just look below, we've got this wall here on the side of the more modern Scottish Parliament. And there's lots of different stones on this wall here. Each one of these stones represents a different Scottish author, and we have actually left space on that wall for future authors to come. The Scottish Parliament was opened in 2004 by Queen Elizabeth, and it was designed by a Catalonian man called Enrique Morales. And he won the competition to design this building here. Unfortunately, he did not live to see it be opened. His wife was also an architect, and she finished this lovely building for him. Now, it has been voted as one of the most ugly buildings in the whole world. People really, really hate the building that is the Scottish Parliament, but I think the more you learn about it, the more likeable it becomes. So if you look down to your right, these seating structures are meant to represent votes. All of the wooden beams on the front of the Scottish Parliament are meant to represent our forest industry, and the water features are meant to represent our locks. Now, if you don't know, we have over 32,000 locks in Scotland. We have lots of them. Now, we're just coming into Holyrood Park. And this was originally a private hunting ground for the royal family when they were staying here in Edinburgh. So the area that we're in now would have been a very dense forest area. During the period that Queen Victoria and Prince Albert actually lived here in Holyrood Palace, they wanted to extend the lovely views of the gardens that you're going to see on the left. Queen Victoria, she wanted to flood this whole area, but Prince Albert managed to convince her that extending the view into a lovely green open space would be more efficient, and that is why we have the lovely green open area now. Edinburgh has actually been voted as the greenest city here in the UK, and we pride ourselves on that for having these lovely green open spaces. On your left, we have the Salisbury Crags. Now, this is another extinct volcano in Edinburgh, and these crags are actually very important in terms of geological history. A man named James Hutton, he studied these rock formations and discovered that the world was not in fact 5,000 or 6,000 years old, but rather millions and billions of years old.
So, Carlton here?
We're coming round to that, I'll point out, okay? No, I'll show you. So, on your right hand side, we have this white tent building, and it is actually the Millennium Project here in Scotland. When the turn of the millennium was coming around, we wanted a new building to signify that, and we came up with the idea for this building. It is Dynamic Earth. And Dynamic Earth is a state-of-the-art science centre here in Edinburgh, and you can go in there and learn all about the history and future of our planet. Now, they came up with the idea for this as a direct correlation to James Hutton that I just mentioned. If you are visiting Dynamic Earth, you can go in there and experience things like earthquake and rainforest simulators, as well as the UK's only indoor iceberg. They just opened a new planetarium in Dynamic Earth, and Stan and I have actually had the pleasure of visiting it. I was invited to the open day for that, and I have to say it is a luxury experience. You go into the planetarium and you sit there in a lovely leather chair and you stare up at the domed ceiling where you will be travelled through time and space. Now, we're just going to be coming into Dynamic Earth and approaching stop number 14, if anybody would like to get off here. The area that we're turning into, it looks like a pretty grand roundabout, but in the original plans for Dynamic Earth, this was actually meant to be an amphitheatre or a small stadium. However, the people that lived here in this area of Edinburgh, when they found out that this was going to be a small stadium, they were outraged. They protested. They didn't want anything to ruin the nice, tranquil peacefulness of Holyrood Park that is behind us. So instead we just have this lovely stand area at the moment where people can come and enjoy their lunch. So just in front of us now, on the right hand side, that's the main building for the Scottish Parliament. And lots of people think that those structures over the windows look like Elvis's sideburns. But they are meant to represent curtains. And the curtains are meant to look like they're being drawn back from the windows as to represent the transparency of government.
Cute, yeah.
On the left-hand side, there is a second building for the Scottish Parliament. I'm not sure if anyone can see that because of the trees. Just behind the trees, anyway. This is a second building, and it was in the original plans for the Scottish Parliament, and we call them thinking pods. Now, this section here was meant to be for our politicians to escape the day-to-day chaos of the main building and go and enjoy their lunch or have a break in these thinking pods. Here in Edinburgh, we do have that joke, though, that we've never seen any of our politicians in those thinking pods. The Scottish Parliament itself, I know some people don't like it and it doesn't really look like it, but it actually went £50 million over budget. I have no idea who approved that, because after 1 or 2 million, I would have said, you've had enough. But they just kept going. Now, directly in front of us, on your left-hand side, can you see the blue building?
Yeah.
That blue building, it was originally a school for the deaf, and it is the first place that British Sign Language was actually implemented in practice. Here in Scotland, we love to talk about our contributions into communication. Do we all know what Alexander Graham Bell invented? The telephone, yes. Now, he actually invented the telephone almost as an accident for trying to invent something similar to a hearing aid. His wife and his mother were both deaf. On your right-hand side, this building here, this is Rockstar North. Rockstar North is a Scottish gaming company that comes from Dundee in the north of Scotland, but their headquarters is now this building here in Edinburgh. Now, Rockstar North are responsible for creating games such as Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2, but also the Grand Theft Auto series. And their biggest accomplishment to date was making $3 billion in 3 days after the release of GTA 5. If you look to your left, this wall that we have surrounding Dynamic Earth, it doesn't really look in time with the building itself, and that's because it's not. This wall here used to be around a brewery, and Queen Victoria, when she lived here in Holyrood Palace, she hated looking at that brewery so much. She moaned about it all the time. So Prince Albert actually had his men construct this wall as though Queen Victoria would be looking at a smaller castle rather than a brewery. Directly in front of us, we have the gates into Holyrood Palace. If you look on the top of that, we've got the national animal of Scotland and England up there. That is the unicorn and the lion. If you look right into the courtyard, you might notice a grand fountain in there. A really good way to know if the royal family are here in Edinburgh is if that fountain is turned on. Only ever turned on when they're actually staying here. Now, a lot of people, they don't go to Holyrood Palace when they come here to Edinburgh. They do the castle, and then they don't want to do anything else historic. However, Holyrood Palace, obviously it has a lot of great history, but it is also still used today by the royal family and for special events. We have about a week at the end of June, at the beginning of July, called Scottish Week, and that is when the royal family will come up and stay here in Edinburgh and travel all the way around Scotland, giving great thanks to people who've made contributions to great charities and discoveries. Looking to your right, this is a section of the gardens that you can visit if you do visit Holyrood Palace. And we have Mary Queen of Scots bathhouse just here. It's that hobbit-looking building. And we're just approaching stop number 15 now. I did hear the bell ring. If you look to your right, you can see the other gates for the palace, and again, you can sort of see the lion and the unicorn up there. So as we come up this area here, this area is named after Holyrood Abbey. And Holyrood Abbey is in the grounds of Holyrood Palace if you are going to visit it. Unfortunately, the abbey itself is in ruins. Now, after a lot of events through history, the abbey became very damaged. Different armies and different angry mobs, they went into the abbey and ransacked it for important materials, and they damaged the inside of the abbey itself. When the Roman Catholic Church took over the abbey, they wanted to restore it to its former glory, but they did make a mistake in the process of that. They changed the interior ceiling beams that were wood to stone, and this was far too heavy for the abbey's structure, so unfortunately it collapsed. Now, this period of events was called the Rough Wooing, and when the abbey collapsed, they did rebuild it again, but unfortunately it just kept collapsing. It was deteriorating quite rapidly. So in the late 1700s, early 1800s, they did make the decision to not rebuild the abbey again. So you can go and visit the ruins that are there, and there's lots of different pictures, art installations of what they think the abbey was meant to look like. There is actually a rumour at the minute in Edinburgh that they are thinking about trying to rebuild it one more time, but the people here in Edinburgh, they really don't want them to attempt to do that. There is some part of the abbey that still stands, and we don't want them to ruin what is left. Now, had you been entering Edinburgh through somewhere such as London or other parts of the UK, you would have come in from the right-hand side. This area down the way, it takes you all the way down to Portobello Beach, which is a very lovely area here in Edinburgh, and the road itself is called London Road. Now, this is to signal to people that finally got to leave Edinburgh that if you continued straight all the way down that way, you would eventually get there. Back in the day, with your horse and carriage, it did take you 3 weeks to get to London. Now, that seems absolutely absurd, as now we know it only takes about 50 minutes on a plane. Looking to your left at that extinct volcano from the top now, the middle peak, that is Arthur's Seat. And Arthur's Seat would take you about an hour to climb to the top of on a good day like today. There is an old wives' tale that if you go up to the top of Arthur's Seat during the first week of spring and take some of the dew off the grass and rub it on your face, you'll stay forever young. Now, this did spark almost like a charity event here in Edinburgh, where lots of women will go up there and they'll climb it for charity and do the whole dew on your face thing.
Where to, if I want to go to Arthur's Seat, I must buy the tickets or...
For Arthur's Seat? No, it's free. You can just climb up it if you want to.
Ah.
If you look down to your left at the minute, we're coming up to a stone circle. This looks like an altar, but it's not. This is the stones of Scotland. 32 different stones to represent our 32 councils here in Edinburgh. And we're just going to be approaching stop number 16. Stop number 16 is for the Robert Burns Monument. Does everybody know who Robert Burns is? Okay, for anybody who doesn't know, Robert Burns is the national poet here of Scotland, and he did poems such as Tea Moose or Tea Loose, but he also wrote the lyrics for Auld Lang Syne. Now, Auld Lang Syne is the song that's sung almost worldwide on December 31st at midnight, a very much loved song here in Scotland. And Robert Burns, we have a whole day in January dedicated to him, which is actually probably the only day in Scotland where everybody does try to eat haggis. People think we eat it every day here. We don't, but we definitely try to on Robbie Burns Day. Now guys, if you keep looking to your left, we're actually coming up to my favourite view of Edinburgh as a city. Now, we've got all the layers of the old town and all the architecture, as well as the lovely view of the Salisbury Crags just here on your left. In my opinion, this is one of the best views of the whole city. Now, if you can't be climbing up Arthur's Seat for an hour during your time here, I have another suggestion for you. On your right-hand side, this is Calton Hill. Calton Hill only takes about 15 minutes to get to the top of, unlike Arthur's Seat. Lots of really nice monuments up there that you can go and learn all about, and you're getting 360-degree views of the city when you go up there. So guys, we're just coming round to stop number 1 again at Waterloo Place. Now this is the hop-on, hop-off service, so you don't have to depart from the bus here if you don't want to. However, there will be a green bus in front of us that will be leaving much quicker than this one, so it's going to sit here for a while. So on behalf of myself and Stan, I just wanted to thank you for coming along today.
Yeah, thank